Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about how to find your next job easily. Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live Show. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Mazor, Kario, product innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And I have a very, very special guest with me. Anish, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Anish Majumdar is a career coach and expert in the hidden job market. Over the past 12 years, he has helped thousands of professionals around the world take the reins and their professional destiny and break free of the necessary of job searching permanently. Wow. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're so invited to join the discussion. And now we can start. So, the first question I have to ask you is what is the hidden job market?
Yeah, I know. It's very mysterious sounding.
Right?
The hidden job market is a way to describe the full uh, array of opportunities that are available to you. The problem that people fall into right out of the bat. Jobs are not job postings. Job postings are one tiny little sliver of what is available to you. So let's start by saying, what is the hidden job market? The hidden job market is the other 95 to 98% of opportunities, which to me can only be found through trusting individuals and building relationships instead of putting all of your ducks into the subservient row of Monster, Indeed, or whatever trash basically falls your way there. That's the hidden job market. And so, what I specialize in is helping people, whether it's you, whether it's anyone else who's sick and tired of being treated like that. And by the way, I've seen people right to the C-suite being treated like that to say, okay, you know what? If I can open up that channel, if I can start the business of getting offers and opportunities, if I can make it abundant, clear, easy, and on my terms, then all of a sudden I don't have to deal with that. And then all of a sudden I can secure roles whenever I want. I can make whatever moves I want. I can be a mom and actually take time out and raise a child without the stupidity of coming back and being judged for that, which I've seen over and over again, right? All of this starts becoming a reality for you when you start saying, okay, the hidden job market or the full market or the entirety, that's what I'm actually after, not just the crumbs.
Like I know I don't know so many like opportunities in general, but I know the tech industry in Israel, and for sure, many of the best positions are when you bring a friend along. Somebody knows someone, and then he brings him into the country, into the company. So that makes sense. Are
It's
we talking about
it's
that?
yes. I would say all what you're saying is perfectly right. All opportunities are based fundamentally on pain, and pain and your ability to identify pain, relevant pain, and align to it is what an offer is, right? And so the easiest way for you to do that is through talking, dialoguing, and getting into a place of exchanging real information at the high level and doing it not as a job seeker but as something else. But yeah, you absolutely hit that like
Okay.
right out of the bat. Yeah.
And I'm just asking, is it like building your own venture part of the hidden job market? Like being a consultant is part of that, or are we talking only for employees?
Yeah, I think, in our day and age, I think for someone to go out there and put an arbitrary barrier on themselves and saying, I only want a full-time role, I only want a consultant role, does it really make any difference at this point? At this point, the only way forward is to be somewhat entrepreneurial about your pathway. And for you and anyone listening, what do you care? Like, why do you care so much about whether the structure is X or Y or Z? I would say get clear on the impact, get clear on who you're working with, make sure that there's desperate commitment between the two of you there for the high level, then make a decision about what you want to do there. But I think in 2023, absolutely, it's asinine for anyone to be out there and say, however it happens, however we want to structure it, we structure it, right? But let's not put the cart before the horse, right? That's a post offer late stage consideration. That's not a consideration for right now, and not the consideration for most of you listening, by the way.
But when I think about it, I see a big gap than when you are an outsider or a consultant or part-time or you're working on different initiatives or with different companies than being really full-time in a position. And if you're talking about the commitment, you have much more commitment for employees than for
Well,
someone who comes from
it's
outside.
not. No, it's not entirely a binary thing like that. For example, yeah, you might be at the right stage in your life where you're like, you know what? I want to see the ripple effects of the impact that I do. So I want to have that say in a company. But look, I've worked with just as many people who they're coming at it from a totally different option. What if you had just spent 8 or 9 years being stifled at one company? With all due respect, the last thing you need is to find another company that does exactly the same. Maybe for you, spending a couple of years getting your feet wet with different companies, making a certain kind of impact happen over and over again, breaking out of that box once and for all, doing that even for a short period of time might be a much, much smarter move than for you to say, you know what? What I really need now is to have another long term relationship. Let's put it in a relationship context. You don't always want to be looking for the next husband, right? Sometimes you want to hook up with someone, right? Sometimes you want to do something differently in your life, right? That's what I'm saying. Don't be linear with this. There's more than one answer here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is that in order to see ourselves in our career, we need to really understand what is like we are a talent, we have skills and capabilities, and we see it as a business. How can we utilize it? And it doesn't matter if it's in this context or other context, we need to build this ourselves as a business. And we need to relate to it as a business and not just someone who's taking everything to one place or to the other. You need to be more flexible in the way that you see what you could offer.
I think a way to describe exactly what you're saying here, because there's I would say there's like five major changes almost that anyone can start thinking about to break out of this. What you say there, yeah, what are you bringing to the market? So most people, they would say I'm a conglomeration of skills. So if I'm an operations person, I got lean skills, I got agile, project management, blah, blah, blah. That's what I am. That's what I'm going to market as a big conglomeration of messy skills without any context. Okay. The other one, which I'll see again over and over again, is like you spent like 5 years working at Amazon and you got this like really weird idea in your head that everyone is going to respect Amazon. So now you're the Amazon operations expert. That's how you brand yourself. That's the first role everyone sees, not realizing that in our environment you could have just as many people being like, God, you worked in that glorified sweatshop. So the question is, what's the answer here? The answer I would say is to ask yourself, what is your process? So for you, Adi, it's not about these are the roles that I've had, here's the podcast I've been a part of, here's the conglomeration of things that I can do. If you were one of the partners of that company, just think like that for a second. If you had equity stake in driving a company forward, it wouldn't really matter how you got there, whether it was marketing, ops, or whatever. You have a mandate to move this thing forward. So if you were to ask yourself, what's the commonality in the roles that I've had, and what's a way that I can spark a kind of change that would be valid and give me a point of view in all of this, if I were to brand myself around that. So, in other words, using the operations thing, if I were to say, look, what do I actually get paid for? What I actually get paid for is not operations. I get paid to align this big, messy machine that we have to really aggressive sort of targets and do it no matter what that scale is. So for me, there's a right and a wrong way to approach growth now. There's a right and a wrong way for me to align and a way for me to have a conversation that is more than please, please me. I got operation skills, right? So everyone, you want to think about this. What's your process? What's your way? Like for me, I'm a career coach, but I would never spend one iota doing this if I was doing the crap that most career coaches do. I'm only interested in this from the point of view of working with those few who truly want this kind of lifelong abundance. And that's not everyone. That's a small, small percentage of people. Most people have been in that matrix so freaking long, they would fight me tooth and nail not to get out of their self-imposed traps, right? So brand around a process. That's probably one of the most important ways to think about this. I can help companies achieve X through what? Adi's magic process that over delivers Y, right? What are the unique sort of pivot points? That's a way to think about this. I would say that's a lot more strategic. When you see people trading skills like that in the hiring world, that's an immediate sign to lowball you, because what I see is you don't know what your value is. You don't. If you're coming at me saying I worked in Israel for a couple of years, I did this, ergo I have a seat at the table, you don't get it.
Mm. I think that most employees I'm talking about not about business owners right now. I'm talking people who has been like 10, 15 years in the job market. They see themselves as a position, right? They don't see themselves as a, what you see is something very total. And more than that, they will not brand themselves this way. They will not sell themselves this way, and
Hmm.
they will not present themselves when they go into this kind of discussion, other
Uh-huh.
than saying, "Okay, I am operations at Amazon. I am doing
Hmm.
cloud operations at AWS. This is
Hmm.
exactly what I am."
Hmm.
So how do you take them from what they are describing, which is the title that is written on their card, whatever, to what you're describing?
Yeah, I think it's frankly it can be a scary process for anyone because I think that there's a there's a good justification you have for even the worst behaviors. And the worst behaviors for this is to say, okay, as long as I think of myself as a title, I don't have to deal with all the risk and all the uncertainty and all that comes with really building out a career. But the truth is, if you are never more than what the title is, then also you're limiting yourself in the eyes of who you're talking with. In other words, if you don't have a vision beyond what you're doing, simply beyond putting out the short-term fires, how will you ever put yourself into a situation where you're never going to be micromanaged? Because the reason you avoid getting micromanaged is to get hyper buy-in on the deep stuff and to get a sense that, okay, even if I'm the boss, you're running a division or something, Adi. Yes, you're going to do 50 things that I might not totally agree with, right? But I know that fundamentally, the way that you want to build this company and the way that I want to build it is aligned, right? But if we never got to that level of truth, right, through our dialogue, then all I see are your skill sets, which means you're still a commoditized entity, which means that, of course, I have to micromanage you. Of course, I'm going to boot you out, right? So understand that to think of yourself in this higher way, which is simply just to think of it like have an umbrella way of thinking of yourself, have a way to frame what you do that is larger than just your immediate aspiration, right? It's not just contained by that. It's a self-protective measure as well as it is anything else, because you providing that context is a huge portion of your ability to do this. What you're saying is messaging and the other things that you're doing, so that in that conversation, you come in as an equal and using your process, you're able to establish a conversation that says, look, here's what I've seen at Amazon, here's what works, here's what doesn't, here's what's happened in the other companies that I've worked at. Here's why I want to speak to you. And what do you think about us trading some notes here to see what you're experiencing, what's going on there, and let me see if I can help, if I can illuminate in whatever way, shape, or form. In other words, you drive it through questions and you use your offer in an active way, not a passive way, but you're using it as a filtering device. And instead of just sitting there saying, this is all great and wonderful, I wonder if there's a job, actually start helping them. Like, I want to scream this from the rooftops. You don't need anyone's permission to start helping people. For the love of God, just start helping them, right? And you can do this at every level. The problem is not you don't have a high enough job title. The problem is you think that people at this level are a different kind of human being than you, right? That you don't have a seat at the table. Well, all of the things that I'm telling you are a way to psychologically get yourself out of that subservient state and into something more effective.
I think that what you're saying is I see it is a type of a sales call. When somebody meets you for a sales meeting, they sell you. So they listen. Salespeople listen to what you need, and they give you the answer, which is what you're looking for. They're not selling usually a product. They're saying an answer to your needs, and
Hmm.
seeing yourself within that position as someone who comes to find his next stage in career is very different. Most people would not do it this way, right?
Yeah, and I think just hearing our conversation, I think you're wildly overestimating the value of like esoteric fit and insiderness. Like, just think about it. Like, if you're suffering from cancer right now and you're looking for the best specialist, do you really care if they're like a culture fit for you, or they get along with your personality, or you're an introvert, or this person's an extrovert? Give me a break. The only reason there's that much thought about it is because there's nothing else on the table for you. It's the only interview that you have. It's the only opportunity that you have. So you're going to overthink 50 million things, right? Get to the truth of what's there. Get to the truth of what's there and have a real conversation. And if you don't have the balls to do that now, you're not going to have the balls to do it two or three down the line. So forget about trying to get respect through a title anyway, right? For me, my impetus would be, uh, in some sense, help as many people as I can. For me, I have a very personal goal, which is I want to change 10,000 lives the way that my life has been changed in this way. The way that long before I coached anyone, this abundance came in when I was getting hedged in because I was a former actor, I'm a former journalist. So I had all of these accomplishments, professional accomplishments, right? But I did not have any, even a BA, I did not have any of the things, the markers that these fear-based gatekeepers would have. So for me, out of desperation, I started building relationships at the high level, right? Out of desperation, I started saying to myself, I'm never going to pitch and present these people. It's never going to work that way, right? So once I understood that, hey, if I do this right, okay, for the people who want to play ball with me, who there's we can go in deep and we can identify, fantastic. For the people who don't, I would rather find that out 5 minutes into a conversation so I can move on with my day and I don't waste my time. Because at the end of the day, I know that for me and for the people we work with, we're 2,500 people in here. Companies are a dime a dozen. So walk away fast. Don't try to make a bad opportunity good, which many of us have done. We've all done this. Don't try to sit there in your insecurity and try to make a lowball offer better for you or something that you know you're going to feel shameful about. Say no to it and have the courage to really focus on this real problem, right? Which is making the whole business of these offers easier for you. Is it selling? I don't think of it as selling because I honestly don't give a damn whether you work with me or the person listening works with me. I'm gonna find those 10,000. I know that the relevancy of what we do is strong enough that I don't need to curry favor with any one person. The question for you, or the question with anyone I speak to, is what do you want to do? What do you want to
Yeah.
do here, right?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Okay, so tell me, do you think it's harder now to find a good job? Although there, at least as I know, many people are looking for good jobs, and especially in tech right now, people are losing their jobs, right? We had the
Yep.
great resignation like 2 years ago, and now it's going to the other direction after
Mm-hmm.
at least what I know, tech companies are firing many people. Do you think it's harder or not?
Uh, in some ways, I think it's harder because the volume of candidates and the volume of noise is a lot more than, or it seems to be a lot more than it ever has been before. That's the downside. I think the plus side of all of these revolutions that we've been seeing is that the amount of change and churn and disruption that's out there is also breaking apart the traditional hierarchies that kept people outside. So what I mean is, in the past, you could be a CEO or a COO and be up in your ivory tower and only talk to people who you reported to, etc. But when you're dealing with an environment where, let's say, 30% of your team is gone, you don't know what the hell's going to happen in a year from now, you don't have that luxury, which means you have got to start bringing in other points of view, other mirrors in some sense, right? By the way, that's what I'm talking about in terms of a way that you can provide value here. So if that's the case, right? Uh, the opportunity would be to say, okay, there is more noise, but the way I'm gonna counterbalance that noise is through differentiation, going the exact opposite. Like if everyone has an MBA, don't go for an MBA, right? Look for that thing that you're a nerd about. Look for that atypical piece of training. Look for that thing that's actually going to give you something differently than the 10 million other people, right? So ask yourself, how do I differentiate? And also, how do I utilize this technology in an advanced way? You've probably heard about applicant tracking systems and the rest. Here's a dirty secret. Our clients and maybe the top 5% of people out there, not only do they not worry about that, our in-house platform, for example, it uses LinkedIn automation. LinkedIn has a secret program called the Snap program. That's a sales navigator application program. What that does is for a certain amount of enterprise partners, you can go in, link your LinkedIn account to it. We'll set up all the messaging. We'll figure out who to target. We'll say exactly what you need to say to maintain that power. You don't have to spend 1 second on that. You just focus on the calls, the relationships, the opportunities, right? And so everyone else is sitting there being like, hey, 90% of the time, my application is getting bounced here. And the only reason you continue to do that is because you think everyone else is doing that, right? But what I'm here to tell you is the only people who are doing that are the people who don't know any better. And I'm not judging that, by the way. My dad spent the better part of like 3 decades in one company, did an amazing amount of work at Bell Helicopter. Never understood why he was never able to rise past a certain level of relatively low management, right? Until many years later, we started having a conversation, and he's like, Anish, I never understood what you were doing, but I understand looking at it now. I understood that there were signals that they were expecting me to send that I never even knew to send, whether I was aware of it, and because I didn't, it kept me in a box. No matter how well I did, it kept me in that box. And so I have a very personal reason for that because I see people like me and you every day, and it honestly doesn't matter how good you think you are. I see very qualified, amazing people getting totally screwed over, and people getting amazing rewards. And the only difference is how courageous they're willing to be and how strategic they're willing to be about this part of the process.
So what you're talking about is actually getting to the right people
Hmm.
within the organizations
Yep.
and starting to communicate with them and provide them value. And
Yep.
then you
Absolutely.
might find the right constellation and the right solution how to collaborate in the future.
Yeah, but you'll definitely, if you do this right, you'll, and the first time I get to know someone, a little rule of thumb I use is I look for at least 2 or 3 moments to either challenge or illuminate something differently. In other words, this conversation, it, I can think about no matter how badly I want an offer, I can take that off the table because for me, if I do this right, I'm going to get insider information about what's going on in this industry in this company. That's information, by the way, I can leverage for the next conversation, the next relationship. I can exchange deep value in terms of what's going on here. And if I have these moments, if I can move it into a deep place and illuminate it, just me being able to see what you're experiencing as a leader and applying my process, my way of it, is giving you massive insight that you never would have had, right? So I can walk away from that knowing, dude, I can recapitalize this relationship 5, 10, 15,000 times. And a lot of times, by the way, I've secured offers from conversations where, look, there's no offer whatsoever. In fact, we kind of scrapped a little bit. But then, like a month later, 2 months later, it'll be like an email being like, hey, Anish, I just want to say thank you for kind of not letting me get away with that crap there. I ended up thinking it over. I made a couple of changes that I think are there, and just anyway, I owe you something. All right. So if you need any help, whatever. This is how you build a career. This is how you actually do this by getting into a place where you're helping, you're abundant, you're building. Like these people that I'm talking about, right? I never looked at them as prospects, and that's part of the reason that this thing really worked for me. Like the people I got to know through this process, they taught me how do you um, have a family. I've got 3 kids, but I come from a completely dysfunctional family. So how do I do that? I learned it from these people. How do you invest? I learned it from these people. Right? How do you travel? What's a good way to do it? I literally looked at these relationships from every aspect of the way that it would value me, right? I didn't just put you into a box of one way that you can serve me, and if not, get the hell out of here, right? So, do you dare look at people that way? Do you dare help people? Because I promise you, if you do that, the pain that we're talking about, look, one offer is nothing in enterprise terms. Whatever your dream thing is, whatever amount you have in your head, by the way, of like some crazy amount that'll do it for you and your family, it's absolutely nothing in terms of enterprise terms. But you've got to get there the right way. And you've got to start by also depersonalizing this by saying, oh, because it's $20,000 more, $30,000 more, I got to keep my head down. No, that's a reason for you to go double. That's a reason for you to really, really own this stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think if you move into this zone of saying, I can't lose, right? Either I'm learning or I'm identifying pain, which I'm then using the pain as the follow up and the pretext for where we go, right? Those are the only 2 things that are possible here. And if there's no third for me, because if it doesn't go in 5 minutes, I picked up on the signals, I'm challenging that. Is that going to work? No, great. Have a great day. We're going to move on, right? It's very simple, but self integrity and standing up for yourself isn't really taught anymore, is it? Right? So the value of that. Another way to say that, the value of that is rising exponentially, right? The value of men and women being ballsy is rising exponentially, not from an ego standpoint, but from a standpoint of, hey, like I've been doing this for the better part of 2 decades. Okay, so whatever your opinion on this is, your opinion is not the same as mine, correct? So what do you want to do here with this situation? It's your choice, right? But there's only one avenue here. There's one window I have to work with you if you want to. And if not, whatever.
Mhm.
But
How do
people don't
you?
have that, They just don't have that. They don't have that feel anymore because they're scared, Right when they need to be
Right.
most courageous and abundant, they're scared and they're going down into this hole.
I think that in general, most people are about, let's say they're looking for their next job. Let's say they're not unemployed.
Yeah,
Currently, they're in a job. Let's say what you're saying is something that needs to be done all of the time. It's not only when I'm looking for my next challenge, right?
ideally,
Is
yeah,
elaborating, right?
yep,
So let's say that right now I want to change jobs.
yes,
It most people would be very anxious about doing that. And would they get a better position? Would they be better off where they are? They're
yes,
comfortable, and what you're saying about fear, it really makes sense. Most people would fear that change, and they need um, people need to trust them in the new place. They
yeah.
need to be right now where they are. Most people would say, okay, everybody knows me. They know what I'm giving. I know how much I'm getting paid. I might get a leadership position. So why would I change? Most people would be very anxious about changing, right?
Well, all of those things you've listed are can just as much be a limiting factor for you because, like you said, they've known you from day one. So that means no matter how much training you've taken in those years or how exponentially your value has increased, you're still fighting a battle in some sense with your own first impression, right? So they're like, no matter how well you did, it's like, look, we gave a chance on you, dude. You know what I mean? Like relax, relax on that growth path. Even if you were like literally if you were out there, and this is why I think it's important to do some of this, even if I would say 10 to 15% of your day should be spent on advancing your own career interests at a minimum, right? It should not be spent 100% giving it up to some freaking boss because you have no one to blame at that point, right? So if if you were in that situation and you hadn't like sort of just sunken into the Kool-Aid of that one company, then you wouldn't need 5 years to reach that point. In 1 year, a year and a half, 2 years, you'd realize, hey, you know what? I've been doing all of this thing here based on the pain that I've been identifying, based on even some of the pro bono consulting I've been doing out there. I can tell you right now that people are getting paid 3 times more than I have for the exact same role. So the conversation I'm having with my boss is not a promotion conversation. You understand? The conversation I'm having is here's what the industry looks like. Here's what's happening at company X, Y, and Z. I'd like to know, despite what everything we're talking about, why is it that the compensation here is in no way completely out of whack with what's going on in the industry, right? It's not personal if you understand what the real data points are, right? If you have things beyond your ego and your insecurity to argue from, right? So
Yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. You've always got to have your eye there. You've always got to have a little bit of a sense there. Look, part of the reason I'm in the position I am is also I've hated authority my entire life. I love individuals. I cannot stand people who bloviate in that way. So I like to do things my way. I like to have that say. And I will tell you, doing a little bit of this, even if you have the most like you're the happiest you are at your company, doing at least a little bit of this is the way to keep them honest because in some sense you don't know. I was working with someone at Goldman Sachs who had spent her entire career there. She's the managing director there right now. Before she was promoted to that, she was having a compensation discussion with members of her team, including a guy there who was about 5 years his junior. And she finds out, looking at what he was making, that she was making exactly that same amount. And she spent her entire career there. So when she brought it up, oh my gosh, Adi, it's a clerical error. I'm so sorry about that. Thank you so much for doing. But my whole point with this is that if she had cared enough about her career, if she'd cared enough about her journey, right, to not just trust Goldman Sachs with everything, to say, hey, you know what, 10 or 15%, I want to see what's happening at JP Morgan. I want to see what's happening here. I want to see what's happening in the international markets. She never would have lost the better part of 15 years of fair income. That's what I'm talking about. That's
Yeah.
the whole game. It's as you're helping them, but you truly are being helped by also breaking out in some sense of your box. And look, if your boss is going to get convinced and you're trying to convince them and it's not going to work, understand that convincing is not the right muscle here. The only thing that's going to work in that situation is when they understand beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're gone, man. You're gone. You're gone. And then just like a relationship where they don't value you, what's the real thing? There's no roses, there's no card that you can buy, okay? Move on. Start hooking up with other people. Start living a life, right? Start moving, start generating that sense of momentum, right? Engage on LinkedIn, engage through your platforms, right? Don't wait around for a perfect resume, perfect LinkedIn. Take action, because the action and the willingness to take one or two steps extra is what gets people the offer. It's not how perfect you are, it's the fact that I cared, right? To show up and actually dialogue with you before you went through all of this, At least that's what I found,
Yeah.
in my work.
What you said, it's a funny example, because I think that women find it much harder to do what you're saying, as I
Yeah.
see it.
Yep.
Sometimes they underestimate what their what value is. Sometimes they're not doing, even before a job interview, they're not
Hmm.
doing the research. So how much is other people doing, getting for this same position? They're not really asking anyone about it. And when
Yes.
they come, they always think it's about them. It's not
Yes.
about the value. It's like they don't find me doing this. I'm not professional enough in this. I don't know about this. Instead of seeing what is the value, well, coming very prepared to what they're
Yes.
doing.
What place would, if you're a highly competent person, exactly like you're saying, and by the way, this so resonates because, one of the little dirty secrets in hiring is that many companies will specifically seek out highly, highly hyper competent, highly accomplished women who are in their 40s and late 40s, single, right? So they know that there's nothing else going on in their lives, and they will bring them in at a somewhat low income level, keep them at a low level, burn them out, and then chuck them out onto the trash. And that happens at every single major company that I can know. Finance, it's happening all over the place. So again, the way that you stop that, one of the ways that you stop that is you stop thinking about your value as just output, and you start asking yourself, okay, if these are the things that I can do, like write down, look at your history, not from a point of skills, but ask yourself, bottom line, the ways that this company changed, write it all out, and then ask yourself this, okay? Not how can I communicate all of this, but what's a company or what's an individual that would actually be worthwhile to partner with, right? You're bringing all of this. What are they bringing? Right? What's your criteria? Because if you do, the more you're able to do. I know that 12 years, 13 years into it, our criteria for what we look at and the number of people we end up rejecting, by the way, is way higher than it was at the beginning, obviously, right? I mean, that's the way that it should be. I'm not trying to become Walmart here, and the same thing should be true for you, right? Is in terms of how selective are you being, right? Uh, you're right that sometimes women, sometimes people, no, anyone who is struggling with confidence, they're like, how can I be more confident? Don't be confident. You're not going to be able to fake confidence between now and your next offer, okay? But what you can do is be picky. What you can do is open up your critical eye, and as you're identifying stuff, right? Here's a little trick. As you're identifying what's really going on here, especially pain, ask yourself this. Personalize it. So if you weren't just like some person, but everything you were identifying there, you were on the hook for. So you're identifying this. Oh, there's a problem here. Oh, and by the way, Adi, if you don't actually take some steps towards solving this, it's your ass that's going to be out 11 months from now, right? So if you were looking at it in that perspective, would you hold your punches in terms of follow-ups, or if you saw something that needed to be explored? No, of course you wouldn't, right? It's just your job, right? Would you care that you were getting along with this person, or would you just say, hey, we have 20 minutes here, there's some more information that I really want to understand, right? Or how are you guys going to solve this in 6 months? Nikhil, one of our clients, he's working at Tesla, right? He starts implementing this for a high level leader there who had been interviewing people, right? He built the relationship, and 5 minutes into it, the guy's like, Jesus, Nikhil, you're asking a lot of questions, right? And his response was, look, if I understand this, you guys are trying to get a gigafactory up in like the next 8 months. You're missing like 40% of your talent. I don't think that's going to happen. Whatever Elon told you, it's not going to happen. So I will tell you this: whoever is not asking you these questions is the wrong person for it. What I would like to know, and what would make me curious, is X, Y, and Z. 3 days later, he's in Texas and he's moving it forward. That's what I mean, right? It's like, ask yourself, what are the behavioral signals? What are the things that I can do, not just the things that I can say? If I had already achieved this big goal and I'd had it for 10 years, what would be my approach here, And it can really start to shift things, That's my acting background as well, I mean, I was an actor in my 20s, film and TV, a lot of theater, and talking about this, like making using those weird parts of your history. When I started doing this, uh, I looked around and I'm like, 95% of hiring is human related and behavioral, but everyone's pretending that it's not. Everyone is like pretending that it's like this analytical data game, the way that they would like to believe that it is, right? But it gave me such a powerful advantage because I could bring all of that stuff, but then I could also bring my all of my ability to influence behavior, all the things that I've learned over the course of that successful career, and actually give people an unbeatable edge there. We need to stop um, we need to stop being so hard on ourselves, and we need to start being a little bit hard on those we choose to work with.
I totally agree. I have to say that it reminds me of the conversation that I have with a friend of mine, and she's working for the last like 25 years in the same very, very strict company. And I told her, like, you cannot really expect them to do anything from you. You need to do the one to be the one to move that. You need to be
Yes.
the one that you are initiating the changes. And she's doing so much in her work, but not seeing herself as something that is so important within the company.
Yes.
She's just
Yeah.
saying, okay, they will see that I'm good and they will give me a leadership position. They will give me a higher salary. But that doesn't happen. You need to have these elbows, to do that. Most people say, oh, it's not for me to have this politics inside the company. But
Yep.
it's needed. It's part of what you're doing in your career, if you want to move. Nobody would do it for you.
This is so true, and what you're talking about, the psychology there. I've seen it, of course, happen in the career side. I've experienced it personally as well. Like I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, as this business was finally, after many years of really struggling, was starting to take off. I was sacrificing stuff on the family side, so it got to a point where my wife and we were in marriage counseling. I was trying to find counseling. I was trying to help. And here's the thing. As long as it was about, look, I'm going to do this so that our marriage can be stronger, which is a noble goal, right? As long as I'm doing it for that, fine, but there was only so much of a limit. What clicked it for me was understanding through doing enough of the work. Darn it, it doesn't matter. Whether this marriage lasts or not, that's not the matter. I want it to. This is the love of my life. I'm doing this for me. I'm doing this because I want to get better in this. I want to feel better. I actually want to feel more fulfilled. I don't, and that's secondary. And I'm even willing to go into a little bit of productive conflict with you so that you understand this is a personal goal for me, not just a couple's goal. That made everything come alive, right? So what we're saying here is it's not really an either or. You'll get all of those other opportunities, those standard ones, if you want them. You're gonna get them faster this way, right? But anyone can tell in 5 seconds when someone walks in with a clear connection to their why and their sense of meaning, because they come in with a stronger, what we call frame, right? A stronger psychological frame, right? And you really need that when you're going out there. Yeah, when you're going after something high, it's always going to be scary because you've never done that before, and there's rightfully a part of your mind that's like, hey, what if I fail? You're right, okay, you're right. But allow yourself to also remember that in all of this, in the end, it won't just be you. Here in this stage, what we're talking about, you're driving everything. You're creating, you're figuring out, you're dealing with your demons. But understand, on the other side of this, you do this right, you're going to be surrounded by people who are going to have resources for you, who are going to be aligned with you, who are going to be there and helping you actively partner. And if you give everything and you fail, I give you my word, having also done that professionally, it's never going to be as bad as you think, and there's going to be advantages that you don't see, and your life is going to be better regardless. So, what I see, the biggest failures I've seen professionally are people who keep their heads in the sand, like people who like they know that there's something more that life is calling them to do, and they say, look, but I don't know, I don't have all the answers. Yeah, no kidding. Like it's the answers are never coming. like they're
Yeah,
never coming.
right.
But the willingness is everything. Truly, the willingness is everything. And Adi, I will tell you, many people I've worked with have said to me, I think I'm delusional for wanting this, or I think I'm being egotistical. But looking at their journeys, man, it's not true. Again, it's one of these things where I'll look at the journey, I'm like, yeah, like I actually think that's kind of shooting kind of low, to tell you the truth. Like no matter how aggressive we are, I can probably guarantee anyone listening to this, you can add 20 to 30% just in your income right now, and you're still like, no matter how aggressive you are, it's not a big deal. It's not you're not going to be shooting past some crazy thing, like there's always a lot more space. It's about, are we willing to take responsibility for the ups and the downs of this larger thing, right? Which is why thinking about yourself in this larger context also helps.
Yeah, I think that the willingness to fail is so important,
So
right?
yes, so
And
much so.
if not, you're going on the safe side. And if you're going on the safe side, you might go really, really slow or even not move because nobody's going to move it for you. You need to go and do this like jump from one side to the other. And
Hmm.
sometimes you will fail and you will fall and it will hurt
Totally.
you. And
But the
most
but
people are trying to avoid that.
the failures, if the failures will, have a value as well, and sometimes a very powerful value. A lot of times the clients we'll work with, Anjana, I remember, she was somebody we worked with recently who she came from government politics, and she was kind of moving into a different area. She had a very toxic kind of break off at that last thing, and she was like, "Look, do I ignore it? Do I minimize it? And my advice working with her, and what she embodied there successfully was, look, um, it's a part of my history, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, look, not everyone's journey is going to be perfect. It's unreasonable to think about that. And look, a bad role can have tremendous value in helping you secure your next opportunity if you use it right. If you use that role like, let's say you're running a company, and in the times when I talk about that last company, right, or that last situation, it's clear that beyond the work that we were able to do, the reason that there was a split, right, and the reason why you can do something differently, the reason you can be the anti-Amazon or the anti-Sony right now, if you can look at it and say, this is an example of what not to do. This is an example of this process. When you go against Adi's process, when you try to sabotage her, when you try to limit her in terms of resources, this is the kind of crap that you get. And so if I look at that and I'm like, it's not just positive, positive, positive. I get to say, look, after this many years, a big part of the reason people will work with me is not because of the positive reviews. They'll actually look for that one critical review, because they'll look at that and they'll say, oh, that's the negative? Great, dude. I'll be the exact opposite of that. So you can use that if you allow yourself to say, hey, you know what? It's all right. I don't have to take this personally. What were the beginning things that we agreed upon when we started this role? What strategically were me and my people able to accomplish? What was the strategic split? What did they get wrong? And how does that refer back ideally to the pain that's going on here and a choice that can be made one way or the other? You're not forcing them to make a choice, but you are, as an expert, giving them a very clear choice, right? If I identify cancer in you and I give you a treatment plan, uh, it's up to you whether you want to do it. But if you work with me, you're doing that. And if you don't, it's all good. But there's no halfway point, because this is the best possible way that I know to keep you alive for you and your family, right? So there's no halfway here. If you're in with me, you're in. And I see people who are out there, they're so passionate about their work. And if they gave themselves a chance to sort of embody all of the stuff that they already have in a slightly different structure, I am very positive, because I've seen it, their passion will be their magic. It'll be the thing that, instead of making them feel desperate or making them feel like they're, an outsider, certainly I feel that way, they can actually say, yeah, that's the light that makes you shine, man. That's the light that gives you, something that no one else has. I know, speaking to you in 30 seconds, you have this light and this vitality that I think at least some of it had to come from staring nothing in the face and still creating something out of that nothingness, or figuring out, hey, you know what, I don't know if this is going to work, I'm terrified, I might completely fall on my face, and then showing up anyway, and then realizing that, hey, you know what, I can find my way through this. I've got strengths that I didn't have, that it imprints itself, I think, on your spirit, and
Yeah.
that is priceless, truly.
Yeah, I totally agree what you're saying, and I could say it resonates with me because in many cases when I try something, and I have like 25 years of a career,
Hmm.
I failed. I've done lots of things that did not work. And I
Yes.
could say, okay, what does it say about me? Sometimes I'm so stupid. I'm doing like bad decisions. I don't know how to manage the business, whatever. Instead of doing that, I'm saying, okay, I learned this from this. From this
Yes.
experience, this is what I learned. Now
Yes.
going forward, I would not do the same mistake. I would do something a different mistake, but that's
Hmm.
fine. At least I'm doing and I'm trying and I'm learning all the way, all the time. Instead of being like very strict with myself and being closed and saying, okay, that's what I can do.
Yes.
I've done something wrong, so I need to go back to this middle area and not try too much. And I think
Hmm.
that in many cases you see people so afraid of trying because
Yes.
nobody promises them anything. But
Yes.
who promises, even if they do promise you, what does it say? Like if you have a position within a full-time position in a very good company, who
Hmm.
promises that you'll enjoy it, you'll have good company, you'll have a good
Yes.
boss, it will stay as is, they will not fire you, you will not
Yes.
get bored? Like who promises you anything?
No,
People want to
you're
feel
right.
safe, but they're not.
You're right. We don't a thing that I think about exactly as to your point here. A lot of times, I don't think that this story, all of our stories, they're being written, and a lot of times, what we consider to be a failure, is just where enough time has not passed, and we have not seen enough of our story to see the real role that that plays. Uh, my first novel, that came out back in 2014. At the time I was deeply in debt, and that was going to get me, my family out. Like that was financially going to save us because we were in desperate straits. Well, the book came out, got nice reviews, tanked, absolutely tanked in terms of sales. So I still remember looking at that computer, looking at the royalty. I made like less than $100, I think, on the month that it came out, and literally tears coming down my face and realizing, but also in that moment, this other part of me, right? This other part said, okay, Anish, fine. What else is generating income in your life? What else can we do? This other part of me that ultimately ended up being capable of taking care of all that debt, moving us into the zone of being multimillionaires, giving our kids like unbelievable journeys, giving me the kind of abundance I never thought, right? 50 million times more than what some lame ass royalty could have done. And I'm not denigrating that. It's still a part of my life, but understand that failure, right, gave me everything. And it gave me, I never would have been able to tap in and realize that there was this whole other part of me that could create a business, that could run it, that can work with thousands of people. All of that came because of that failure, right? So, but in that moment, not seeing any of that stuff, all I saw were all of the years that I spent on the book, trying to get an agent, it getting rejected from all of these publishing houses, all of which is true. But I have to tell you, when I look back on that, it's like it's one of the things I am the most proud of professionally, because it not only changed my life professionally, I wouldn't have met my wife. It just it changed my life in 50 million ways, but I had to move through it enough to be able to let go of that old one thing that says this is only a success if this one thing happens, right? Whereas 50 million other things, wonderful things happened, but that didn't. And coming to the point where it says, okay, it's all right. Let that go, man. Like our lives are
Yeah.
actually bigger, and I promise you, this is true for most professional failures. There's really no such thing. Those are the things that are going to give you, like that bad boss you had is going to give you this like weird muscle memory. So when you're talking with someone for 20 minutes, you're like, you know what? Privately, you're like, I'm going to end this call and all that. I'm not going to pursue this because I can already tell before this is not something that I want to be a part of. That's value. That's good for you. That's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
even though it came from a crappy place,
Yeah.
you know?
Like the best thing that happened in my career that I got fired
Yes.
after I gave birth to my second son, and they fired me. And at that moment, it was like total shock. It's like total shock. I did not expect it. And I had these two small babies, like 2 years old and
Wow.
3 months old. And for me, it was the best thing ever. I did not think about coming and being self-employed and having a business afterwards because I thought, okay, I'll find a position. It will be very
Hmm.
comfortable. I'll raise my kids, and that's it. I didn't have any vision that is different. that was so powerful when it happened. I could say it was the best thing that happened to me in my career, for sure, that they fired me. So I'm so happy that it happened. And it reminds me that I think that Churchill said that success is going from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm, right?
That's so true. That I you know it's you say it like so beautifully. In my own life, and I just try to use that way of thinking from the point of view of almost saying, if I can make what I'm doing here, if I can make the objectives beyond success and failure in this way that I'm fearing, if I can make it around different objectives that are winnable, that are achievable right now between me and you, then I'm putting myself in a position where we can discover that, where we can make that happen. Ultimately, these job offers, these things, no matter what you do, it takes two people or a company in you or multiple people to sign off and agree on it. So it's okay that to also say like, look, I'm not ultimately in control of anything. I can't make anyone do anything. Like
Yeah,
so
right.
I can control what I do, and I can take the steps that I can take, but I can also hopefully work a little bit on like being okay in my heart and being okay in those situations where it's kind of a heartbreaker. And I have to tell you, like, this is something that I still struggle with now. Like people who come close, I'm like, oh my God, this life would have been, I could have every confidence in the world that this is the right thing for you to do, but I need something in you that says, yeah, I want to do this too, or God, I'm sick, or I want something. Um,
Yeah,
but I live for that. And the thing what I found is if you give yourself a chance to find it, there's way more kindred spirits out there than we give ourselves credit for. Like, I'm an outsider, I'm a weirdo, but I found that I can do business with all sorts of weirdos, not just my type of weirdo, but there's 50 million different types of weirdos out there. And so give yourself a chance because you don't know what the sum total of building new relationships and sharing your light in this way is going to be, even more than what you're trying to accomplish professionally. I've always found massive ripple effects that happen that also give you all sorts of ballast in other ways. So it's this trust for people, I think, that ultimately is, I didn't grow up with that. I come from a very conservative household, so I didn't realize like networking, building relationships, this is all very like very very like kind of a foreign language, to me. But once I started moving through it, I started realizing like, there's a place for my heart, and there's a place for my openness, and there's a place for me to have the kind of conversations that I want, instead of feeling like I have to watch my back. And certainly for someone like you, what a waste of time to have a conversation with you, Adi, and waste your time with questions that are irrelevant or to not. I mean, ideally, if I saw your amazing journey, I'd spend so much time beforehand just like nerding out on, man, I got to make the most of this time, dude, because look at this journey she's been on. Look at the weird stuff that she's seen. Like that's what I
right.
want. I want to be able to die and be able, or when I'm looking at the end of my life, success or failure, I just want to know that that life could have only been lived by me. And it sounds
Yeah,
like your journey, what you're creating for yourself is also that. Like even though there's this
yeah,
been these terrifying moments, this is going to be a singular pathway that you're creating, right? No one's going to be able
right.
to really mimic that.
Yeah,
I think I think that helps.
I feel it in my heart when you say it. I have to tell you, because in many cases, through the journey, I had the option like there are junctions. There are junctions, and then you stand there and say, okay, would I go in my own path, which is unknown, but it's
Mm-hmm.
mine, or
Mm-hmm.
would I just go and turn to this full-time position as an employee
Mm-hmm.
as this, or somebody wants me as this. And I
Mm-hmm.
got lots of offers through the way, but I felt that it's not for me. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it was so hard because, in these junctions, you're
Yes.
questioning yourself and you say, okay,
Yes.
this is safer. This
Yes.
might have more money. Sounds better for my career. It's a good
Yes.
title. But
Yes.
I always felt that I want to find this very specific path that I
Yes.
would wake up and say, okay, I'm so happy that I woke up today. I have this mission that I'm working on.
Yes.
Yeah, and we have how much hours a day, how many hours a day we're happy, we're content.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time we're doing our jobs and we have a few
Mm-hmm.
hours at home in the end.
Mm-hmm.
How do we build that in a sense that we're still vivid? we're
Yes.
full of life, we're full
Yes.
of passion.
Yes.
That's a
Absolutely.
question.
I think if it's been a while, the journey towards like that fulfillment, unfortunately, starts with the terror that you described, because it's almost like going underwater and breaking for air the very first time, it's very shocking and it's very scary and you're confronting what happens, what's not, but uh, I think what you're talking about, that sort of call from the heart that says there's something else for us. I look at that as a really sacred thing, and usually what I found is life tries to like it tries to say, okay, you want that thing at the mountaintop, okay, oh, and you're climbing, okay, great, but I got a little motel for you like a third of the way in. Tell me that's good enough, right? And you're like, nope,
Yeah,
you gotta say, nope, it's not good enough for me. Yep, I know I can go there. No, I'm saying no to it. Even if I get nothing, that's no, that's not going to work. Fine. Halfway up, Adi, come on, look at this place. It's so much nicer. Come on, you don't need, come on, it's a little bit crazy. Come on, let's not be
yeah,
extreme here. And again, you have to go through that process that says, okay, there's a reason why I said this. And I'm not just someone who's starting out, for example, fresh out of college. There's a reason why my instincts are telling me this. So again, I have to say, okay, with love, thank you very much. Knowing also that I can probably find that again if I needed to. Sorry, no, and it's this process, right, that gets you into a place where not only can you identify and do it, but I think that process of saying no actually helps give you that final 5, 10, 15% that you need to actually be able to credibly secure that. It's like you need a little bit of that, the little to
yeah,
be
yeah,
able to say beautiful. Like if I was lucky enough, like if we were on a first date, I need some really terrible dates before I'm like, oh my God, okay,
yeah,
okay, okay, I got to take
yeah.
this super seriously. This is special.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I totally agree. I feel that, like when you're saying about these like points on the way,
Yeah.
I feel it's like parkour, when they jump from one building to the
Yeah.
other.
Yes.
So you have the midway, and you're not sure you're gonna get to that. Like this midway, it's like a
Yes.
few moments that you really don't know, and it's
Yes.
so scary. So
Oh God,
at that
terrifying.
point, yeah, and at that point, you need to believe that you will get to the other side, and
Yes.
and you always need to do it in order to really get to the other side. Because if not, you would just stay when where it's secure and try to really go again and again to the same position.
Hmm.
And I think that it's a way of living to
Yes.
believe that to trust yourself,
Yes.
to trust others, to trust,
Yes.
I know, whoever believes in God, in the universe, I know
Yep.
who, that you could do it. And if not, it's okay. It's
Yes.
okay. Like it,
Yes.
and it's like living with that unknown, with that fear, is something that is needed for everyone. It's not only related to career. It's
No,
like
absolutely. It's a
when
it's a
you're,
it's an element of faith almost, like in
yeah,
these hard moments, and turning to it. What you said though is so uh, uh, relevant and valuable though too, because what you mentioned is, and even if it doesn't, it's okay. That part I think is so valuable. A couple of years ago, for many years, my worst nightmare was things are gonna get so bad, I gotta like go to a pawn store and pawn off stuff, right? Where that was my nightmare. Well, guess what? That actually happened. Where I was at a pawn shop in Rochester a couple of years ago. I had my wife's jewelry that my mom had given her, was selling. It was so freaking depressive, like the nightmare. And I'm sitting there, but here's the thing: this ended up being one of the most positive experiences of my life, believe it or not, because I'm sitting there. This is it. I fell like between those buildings. I fell right through, and I'm looking at these people, right? And a lot of these people, they're lifers. They're here not because they were trying to do something or trying to build something and they ran into hard times. They're here because they're alcoholics. They're here because this is their life. This is how they're going to get through the day. And when I realized that, I understood that even if you fall through that crack, that's a very different person than the person who freaking lives in that crack, right? Just because you're going through a dark forest is very different than the person who lives there. And the fact that you're there for the reasons that you are changes everything. Like it shocked me out of that way of thinking, because I realized, darn it, like there is a value. Everything we're talking about, it's in the light. We're talking about stuff that is so firmly in the light that even if you fall a little bit, you're still in the light. You haven't
Yeah,
become a different person. I
yeah,
almost needed to see that in some sense to be able to like let go a little bit of that, whatever that nightmare thing was, whatever that inner fear was.
yeah. So we're continuing. I was supposed to finish like 20 minutes before. Okay, another failure here for me. So your number one tip for people who want to get to the next stage in their career.
um, Talk to more people, get to know them, dare to create a relationship, and dare to do some of that without an immediate outcome. Like if you allow yourself, whatever your goal is, say, hey, let me just focus on like I want to build like 10 really unique relationships with people in industries that I'm curious about who've done really interesting things, taking all outcomes off the table. Okay, I just want to like when I was a journalist, I just want to get to know your story. Okay, if you do that, I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can do. And having these conversations without that immediate outcome will help you also through these conversations start framing what you do through a process. Will start allowing you to say, oh, I got to ask more questions here. It'll start that process of easing it up. Probably one of the most powerful things that you can do.
Yeah, sounds interesting, and I will try it more, although I'm doing it most of the time because
You are doing
for
it.
me,
Oh God, yeah, you're already. Come on, yeah, you're doing it at an entirely different level.
I have to tell you, I just talked about that specific um, quality with my kids. I
Hmm.
think that being curious about people and really knowing how to listen and connecting to people, not because you want something from them or they will do
Yeah.
something for you, just to really understand people, the way they think is so growing for you as a
Yes.
person. You grow just doing that. And I think
Yes.
it's one of the qualities that you need to nurture all the time as a person, not only in your career. And then you change yourself just by listening to others
Yes.
and just
Yes.
understanding them. And I think it's so important. Okay, so where could people hear more about your work and contact you?
Well, thank you for the conversation. Obviously, it went by like it was 5 minutes on this side, so I really appreciate it. Uh,
Super.
helloanish.com would be kind of our headquarters on the web. So if you'd like if to go deeper into our career trainings, our videos, things that are actually working out there, that would be a good place. There's also a special link for those of you who'd like to just learn our strategy right now. It's called Tap the Hidden Job period market / ASAP. And if you go to that link, we just wrapped a class a couple of days ago called The New Rules of the Job Search. Kind of breaks down the big changes that we're seeing, and you can start using it right now to deploy it, get some more visibility going, do better on the calls that you might be having wherever you are. Even if you're happily at work, this should help. And if you're on LinkedIn, put in Anish, Anish, career. I promise you, I'm probably the first brown face that will show up there. So don't
Great,
hesitate to drop me a follow there.
great. So first, Anish, I'm so happy that we met. That's the
Same
first thing
here.
I had to say. And you have such great energy. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So I want to thank you for your insights and for your energy. So
Thanks.
thanks.
Thank you as well. Thank you as well for not just making it easy, but sharing your perspective in terms of what you have experienced out there, what you've seen out there. I always, I'm a nerd for that stuff, so I find that incredibly valuable as well.
Thank you. And to all of you change makers out there, join me again next week for another innovative, insightful talk. See ya. Bye bye.